This podcast is sponsored by Curology.
Sometimes it would almost hurt to look in a mirror.
Do you struggle with skincare issues that keep you feeling self-conscious and less than who you want to be?
I thought I'd have to live with this all my life, but then I found Curology.
With Curology, a personalized prescription formula is selected specifically for your skin by a licensed dermatology provider.
I could do it all online, and the products are sent right to my door.
Whatever your issues, acne, dark spots, clogged pores, fine lines, rosacea, and much more, Curology's science-based personalized prescription skincare can help treat it.
Curology didn't just clear up my skin. It changed my life.
Now get up to 6 skincare products free, up to a $52 value with free shipping, and a no-cost consultation with a licensed dermatology provider when you go to Curology.com. Go to Curology.com for this free offer. That's Curology.com. Prescription products are excluded from free product offer. Applies only to your first box. Subject to consultation. New subscribers only. See Curology.com for full details.
When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
You're listening to The Drag.
This podcast contains strong language, references, and descriptions of domestic abuse, violence, and suicide. It also has graphic descriptions of gun violence in schools. Mental health is an important part of this story, so please take care while listening. Previously on this season of Darkness.
It's like a battle scene. It's like, there's another shot and another shot.
All of a sudden, a high-powered rifle bullet went past my right ear. And I know that's the one that hit Mr. Ballchuck.
We're now stuck with a mortally wounded Paul Sontag.
Something had knocked me down and paralyzed me.
We came to put an end to this. My words, not his. Let's go up to the tower.
On the morning of August 1st, 1966, Ranger Ray woke up in his Austin home. His full name is Ramiro Ray Martinez, but he goes by Ranger Ray. Ranger Ray had spent the weekend before celebrating his 5th wedding anniversary with his wife, Vernell. The Martinez family had a lot to celebrate. Just 2 weeks earlier, their twin daughters had turned 2 years old. On the morning of August 1st, his wife headed to her job as a secretary at a publishing company. Ranger Ray stayed home to look after their daughters, playing with them throughout the morning. Around 11 a.m., he dropped his daughters off at daycare. He gave them each a kiss before leaving. He headed back home to get ready for his shift at the Austin Police Department. Before joining the police force, he had taken classes at the University of Texas, but he left to join the Army, where he trained to be a combat medic. After his time in the military, he joined the Austin Police Department. Ranger Ray had worked there for the past 5 years, and he had moved up to the rank of captain. He eventually went on to become a Texas Ranger. His email signature says Ranger Ray, and he even wrote a biography titled They Call Me Ranger Ray. He's clearly proud of the title. So that's why I'm calling him Ranger Ray in this podcast, even though he wasn't a Texas Ranger in 1966. After dropping his kids off at daycare on August 1st, Ranger Ray got ready to work a 3 to 11 p.m. shift.
I was polishing my boots and polishing my breast because I took a lot of pride in my uniform, in my appearance as a police officer.
He laid out his uniform and badge on the bed. Then he went to the kitchen to start making lunch. He had steak that day.
I turned the television on at noon because I always like to listen to the news.
As his meal warmed in the oven, Ranger Ray watched the KTBC morning news. On the screen, he saw Joe Roddy at his desk reading out the day's headlines. Then, someone off camera passed Roddy a note.
He looked at the note and he read it and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, there is a person reported on the University of Texas Tower shooting a rifle. There have been a number of people injured, and they have been taken to the emergency room at Breckenridge Hospital, and we'll keep you updated." And that was it. So I thought, hey man, that's pretty bad.
The news broadcast returned to the daily reports. Ranger Ray continued to make lunch until Roddy received another note on air.
He said that there were 5 people had been reported shot. He was telling that the police was warning all citizens to stay away from the campus because of the danger that was going on.
Ranger Ray decided to call the police station.
I got on the telephone and I called and identified myself to the operator. And I said, do y'all need some help?
This is Martinez. Do they need anybody?
Well, hey, Captain. Just a moment, sir. Okay. Captain Martinez is on. You want him to come out? Yes, sir. He'd like you to come on out if you will.
Okay, I'll be right over.
Okay, that's at the university.
Well, wherever they want me.
I'm Sarah Kinney, and this is Season 4 of Darkness. You're listening to Episode 4. On the police phone line, the operator connected Ranger Ray to the lieutenant on call. The lieutenant told Ranger Ray to head to campus and divert traffic at any unmanned intersection. Before Ranger Ray left his house, he called his wife.
I said, "Dear," I said, "there's a man at the University of Texas Tower shooting at people. Don't worry, I'm going to go to work, but I'm going to be directing traffic. So don't worry about it." So she says, "Be careful."
He hung up the phone and put on his uniform.
And then I got into my little 54 Chevrolet car that I had at the time and went to the university area.
His Chevrolet didn't have any lights or sirens, and with backed up traffic, that meant he couldn't speed over to campus.
However, you got to realize that back in those days, even then, Austin had traffic problems. And he was at 12 or after 12, during the lunch hour, so there was a lot of traffic.
As traffic slowly moved forward, Ranger Ray turned on his radio. He couldn't see the tower yet, but he could hear the KTBC broadcast from campus. Here's reporter Phil Miller talking to Neil Spelse on campus that day.
It's a bizarre scene. It's a rare sight. A campus that earlier today was filled with the normal students, shirt sleeves, going to their summer school classes in the morning, and now there are students in their shirt sleeves lying prostrate on the ground in the grass on the sidewalks, dead or seriously wounded, unable to move, and no help able to get to them.
Ranger Ray neared campus.
When I got the view of the campus, I could see that all the intersections were already covered by police motorcycle officers working traffic, keeping people away. So I said, well, I'm not needed for the traffic.
He turned away from the university and drove into West Campus, the student neighborhood on the other side of the drag.
And I knew that he was something bad was happening because I could also hear a lot of shooting. And they were big caliber rifles, high caliber.
He could also hear ambulance sirens. As I went over last episode, the EMS, or emergency medical services, weren't what they are today.
The people that drove, or the attendants in the ambulances, or if you want to call them an ambulances, were just college students, working part-time jobs. And the object back in those days was for them to drive as fast as they could to accident scene with a siren on and pick up the person, throw them in the back, and take him to the hospital. Or take him to the funeral home, one or the other.
People were putting those who were injured into ambulances, which took most patients to Breckenridge Hospital. It was the city's only trauma center at the time. Sandra Wilson was one of the many in need of help on the drag. She had been shot while walking to meet her friend, Jim Bryce, at the student union for lunch.
After I got knocked down, I didn't know what it was.
She was lying on the pavement, unable to move. She didn't know it at the time, but the bullet had hit her spine, lung, and arm.
I was really scared. I remember being mostly I was just very surprised. I didn't know what was happening. Originally I thought some outer space thing had landed and paralyzed me or something.
Minutes passed, and the shooting continued around her. She realized what had happened and called out for help. 3 men approached her. She learned 2 of their names later on.
Somebody rushed out and saved me. Chip Jansen. He was a young guy. He was only like about 17 or 18. He was working at the movie theater doing construction. He was going to go to college in the fall, some other college, and I think he and an electrician that I later found out 2 years ago, I found out his name was Dick Vaughn.
As gunfire continued, the trio picked her up and carried her around the corner of a nearby building.
And then that's where the ambulance came. And then Chip, he stayed with me in the ambulance the whole time and kind of held my body together. He was amazing.
The ambulance drove Sandra away from the shooting and toward the hospital. Meanwhile, Brenda Bell was still trapped on campus. As I mentioned in episode 2, Brenda Bell had been in her Shakespeare class when the sound of gunfire interrupted the lecture. Through the classroom windows, she and the other students had seen Officer Billy Speed get shot. Afterward, the students and professors evacuated the room. They realized the danger of being near the windows since they were so close to the tower. Brenda and the other students lingering in the halls of the building were unable to leave.
That was when I went down to the basement to the payphone because I wanted to call my boyfriend just so he wouldn't worry.
Brenda managed to get through to him and immediately told him she was all right. Not everyone in the city had heard about the shooting yet.
He was not at all worried. He was at the apartment pool, watching the girls, getting a tan. And so by the time I reached him, he was, he just didn't know what was happening.
She hung up soon after. She was unsure of what to do as the gunfire continued outside.
And so we kind of milled around in the halls, and eventually, we started going into other rooms that had a view and that maybe seemed safer to peek out. Our room was just in full view of the tower. So we kind of dispersed. Hardly anyone left the building. We were just there.
However, people did enter the building.
Probably within 20 or 30 minutes, they began appearing. And it was obvious they weren't law enforcement. I mean, they were dressed in regular clothes. They were young men in their 20s. And they had hunting rifles, I guess. They were gigantic guns that made huge noises.
The men started shooting back at the tower through the windows.
I think my first thought was, well, I hope they get this guy. I hope they stop it.
But as they continued firing, she became less sure about their presence.
I remember one of them said, I'm going to get that son of a bitch. And although I wanted him to get the son of a bitch, he seemed a little overwrought and crazy. And the presence of those guys in the building shooting these very loud guns, and they seemed a tiny bit reckless, it wasn't really comforting. It wasn't comforting in the way I'd hoped it had been.
Farther down the West Mall, University Co-op employee Alan Crum was stuck on campus. After getting a newspaper boy to safety, Crum had been directing traffic away from campus on the drag. Later that evening, he did an interview with KTBC, which is what you're about to hear.
Yes, sir. I couldn't get back across the street because then I figured I might get shot myself.
Crum wanted to call the co-op and his wife to let them know he was all right, but he couldn't find a phone.
So I went to the next building, and the next building.
With shots still firing overhead, Crum ran deeper into campus until he was just one building over from the tower. Then he got an idea. He planned to run into the tower to help stop the shooter. He wasn't even sure whether police were on the scene yet, and he had no means of contacting them. But if the police were in the tower, he wanted to help them.
And then I thought perhaps I could help them when I got over there, so I waited till he shot from the other side of the tower and then ran into it myself.
In his police report, Crum said he saw some security guards when he entered the tower. The university first hired security guards back in 1947, but they weren't police officers. The guards were hired to protect university property and to help guide others around campus to where they needed to go. So stopping a sniper wasn't in their job description. The security guards told Crum they had already called the police. So when he found a phone, he focused on calling the co-op.
Yes, sir. I tried to call the store to let them know where I was at.
But all the lines were busy. He turned around, and that's when he finally saw an Austin police officer.
And I ran into Officer Day, and then from there we teamed up. I offered my services. He accepted.
Officer Jerry Day was one of the first officers to make it into the tower. He had responded to the reports of shots coming from the tower, but he didn't have a plan on how to stop the sniper. Officer Day and Crum had no idea where the sniper was shooting from, or whether there were multiple shooters. They went to a library on the 4th floor of the tower building. Through an open window, Officer Day peered up at the observation deck to see if he could spot the shooter, or shooters. Officer Day pointed his gun up, toward the top of the tower.
And, Officer Day tried to get a shot at this man up there, but he missed.
When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
Back on the drag, Ranger Ray parked his car behind a church less than half a mile from the tower.
And I parked my car there on a 2-hour zone. I got out of my car and I could hear sirens, and a lot of sirens.
Ranger Ray worked his way to campus, sheltering himself from the gunshots.
I knew that if I could see the top of the tower, that sniper could see me.
He approached the South Mall, which is right in front of the tower. He moved beneath the trees of the pathway and ducked behind a wall. Overhead, a statue blocked his view of the tower. He saw people hiding anywhere they could.
I looked down and I saw a puddle of blood, and I didn't know that that's where Officer Billy Speed had gotten killed, shot, and there was his blood there.
Among the wounded, he didn't see any officers. Ranger Ray assumed the other officers had a plan to take down the sniper. But with no cell phones or radio, he had no way of contacting them. As Ranger Ray peered through the railing, he noticed more than just the lack of officers.
And there on the mall was a woman, a pregnant woman. She was on her back, and there was a person next to her, a guy, it looked like he was dead. But she was moving around because the sun was over 100 degrees temperature, and she was laying on that hot concrete.
Ranger Ray could see Claire Wilson and Tom Ekman. As a combat medic, Ranger Ray had trained to help people, to rescue them, to pull them to safety. He could have helped Claire and Tom, but as a police officer, he was trained to focus on dissolving the threat first.
I wasn't going to stop and get shot, because then I would be useless. My duty that day was to get the sniper, or help get the sniper.
He knew stopping the sniper was the way to help the most people.
And so I made a decision at that time that I was going to go into the tower to see if I could help the assault squad, which I thought was coming or had come from the police department. Because when I got there, you got to realize that almost an hour had elapsed.
SWAT teams didn't exist back then. That meant the Austin Police Department lacked the special weapons and tactics available to police now, such as heavy weaponry or knowledge of how to handle a sniper. Ranger Ray wasn't even wearing a bulletproof vest. He sprinted out into the open, past the people on the plaza. He hoped that running in a zigzag pattern would make him a tough target. He ran toward a wall next to the tower building.
And then I followed that wall around to the west side entry into the main building. I knew where the elevator was because when I went joined the Austin Police Department, the first day they took us up there to see the city from up there.
Having been up there before, Ranger Ray knew the shooter could see most of Austin from the top of the tower. He went to talk to the security guards and asked for one of their radios. He too tried to contact the police station, but was unable to get through. Just above him, Crum and Officer Day headed back down to the ground floor of the tower after looking out the fourth floor window. On the ground floor, they saw William Cohen, a Department of Public Safety officer. He had a pistol and a rifle. Crum asked Cohen if he could take the rifle if he joined Cohen in going up the tower. Cohen handed it over. Ranger Ray soon joined them. The four of them teamed up. They went over what they knew so far about the shooting. Then, they split up. Crum and Officer Day made their way up the tower with Agent Cohen. They rode the small elevator up and got off at the 26th floor. They then took the stairs to the 27th floor. This was the highest floor in the tower with offices. The observation deck was 2 floors above them. Back on the ground floor, Ranger Ray tried to call the police station, but the lines were still busy. So he decided to go up the tower to join Crum, Officer Day, and Agent Cohen.
Something that was odd and funny to me nowadays is that there was a young man with a clipboard, and he wanted to know my name. I said, okay, so I gave him my name. I said, okay, thank you.
The man let him pass into the elevator.
While I was going up on the elevator, the little numbers, trickle off. They have changed the elevator now, but back in those days, little lights would light up. And as I was going up, I said, this sounds bad because I could hear the shooting, even inside of the elevator, you could hear the sound of the rifle fire.
Ranger Ray pulled out his police-issued pistol as the elevator neared the top of the tower.
I didn't know what to expect. And I said, I'm a Catholic. And back in those days when I was in the Army, they told me that if imminent death is imminent, to say a perfect act of contrition. It's a prayer.
The Catholic Church has changed the words to the prayer over the years, but the meaning has stayed the same.
In other words, he's asking for forgiveness of your sins in case you die. So I went up, I said my prayer.
The elevator stopped at the 27th floor. Ranger Ray pointed his gun straight ahead as the doors slid open in front of him.
Then the door opened, and I had my gun pointed out, and I was looking at a pistol and a rifle.
But behind the pistol and rifle were faces Ranger Ray recognized. Officer Day held the pistol, while Crum held the rifle. Ranger Ray also recognized Agent Cohen behind them. Now Crum, Ranger Ray, Agent Cohen, and Officer Day gathered around a large wooden table near the elevators to make a plan. Cohen tried to use the phone.
He was trying to make communications with the phone, because you got to remember back in those days it was a dial phone, you had to dial it.
Before heading up to the observation deck, Ranger Ray wanted to make sure the offices on the 27th floor were clear.
From my Army training, I always knew that you had to secure the ground that you had taken before you could proceed forward so nobody could come from behind you.
Crum and Officer Day went through the offices with Ranger Ray while Cohen stayed at the table near the elevators.
So Jerry Day and I started opening the doors, and seeing that nobody. I came to one office and I tried to open it. It was locked. And somebody said, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's the police." And they said, "Just a minute."
The people had barricaded themselves inside the room using stacked furniture. When they heard it was the police, they began to remove the blockade.
They opened the door, and I remember there were 2 nuns, because back in those days, the nuns still wore those black habits.
But behind them was someone else who caught Ranger Ray's attention.
And the man came out, and he had a pair of white women's shoes, and they were bloody. And he said, "Let me have your gun, and I'll go shoot that SOB. He has killed my whole family."
Ranger Ray didn't know his name, but it was Michael Gabor Sr. His wife, sister, and 2 sons had been shot in the stairwell above them when the sniper first entered the observation deck.
And I said, "Sir," I said, we'll take care of it. And so he wanted to get my gun, and so I had to kind of wrestle with him.
Gabor reached for Ranger Ray's gun, wanting to go after the sniper himself. Officer Day and Crum helped Ranger Ray calm Gabor down. Officer Day escorted Gabor to where the officers had set up. The others who were in that room had gone ahead down the elevator. Having cleared the floor's offices, Ranger Ray moved on.
The next thing we did, I looked at the steps, because that was as far as the elevator could go.
Ranger Ray opened the doors to the flight of stairs that led to the observation deck. The sound of gunfire grew louder.
When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
As Crum and the law enforcement officers approached the observation deck lobby, Claire Wilson, Tom Ekman, and Rita Jones were still lying on the scorching plaza below. Claire and Tom had been there since the shooting started over an hour ago. Rita, who wasn't injured, had seen them lying on the plaza and ran over to Claire. Rita then lied down next to her, and she had been talking with Claire since then. Those hiding nearby knew Claire was alive. They could see her shifting every now and then. John Fox and James Love stood just to the side of the plaza stairs. They were inches from where Officer Speed had been shot. John and James were the 2 friends who had played chess together before walking to campus. Now, they watched Claire as she shifted her legs to keep them from burning on the pavement. The sun beat down on John and James, just as it did on those lying on the plaza. 2 different men ran out from behind the statue. John and James followed them seconds later. John still remembers this moment today.
I thought time is ticking. I need to, time is ticking.
One of the men in front of them pulled Rita up off the pavement and onto her feet.
And she jumped up, grabbed her purse, and took off for Wagoner Hall as fast as she could go.
John sprinted up the steps with James just behind him. Now on the open plaza, they raced toward Claire. John dodged the man now following Rita, who had run off to the opposite side of the plaza from where he had come.
I need to get down to business, and I need to get Claire carried off the mall.
John stopped in front of Claire, looking over her and Tom for a split second.
I told them Tom was dead.
Next to John was the other man who had ran out in front of him, Brian Ellison. Brian was a Vietnam veteran, and he struggled to pick up Tom. Once James caught up, John and James helped move Claire.
I grabbed Claire's ankles, and he grabbed Claire's wrist.
The 2 lifted her.
It was just it wasn't a conscious decision, but how do you carry a pregnant woman without a stretcher? You couldn't throw her over your shoulder. So that's what we ended up doing. And we ran straight toward shelter.
They headed back toward the statue where they had come from.
Each second seemed pretty long.
At first, John walked backward, facing the tower. Then, the two turned so they both faced the stairs, holding Claire between them. Then, they sprinted, still out in the open with both of their backs to the tower.
I remember thinking then, I've not been shot yet, I've not been shot yet, I've not been shot yet. I had a feeling. There's a spot in my back, right in the middle of my spine, and right between my shoulder blades, about the size of a coin. And it was, I thought it was where the bullet was going to come in. I thought that spot was where the bullet would hit me.
Behind them, Tom's body kept slipping out of Brian's grasp. John and James carried Claire down the steps.
But talking about it now, thinking about it, I can feel that tingle. I can feel a tingle in the middle of my back, right where I imagine that spot would be.
They were close to the bottom of the stairs. The sun was still beating down on them.
I mentioned how hot it was, how hot I was. I was sweating like a pig. I wore glasses back then, and they were like Buddy Holly glasses. They're big and thick and dark, and nobody had options to wear any other kind of glasses back then. And they were heavy, and as we came down the stairs, they slipped farther and farther down my nose.
Then his glasses fell onto the ground.
Everything turned into a blur.
John couldn't see.
I'm legally blind without my glasses. I have my left eye is at 2400. What other people see at 400 feet, I can see. I have to get up to 20 feet to see. So I'm really nearsighted.
The two turned the corner of the statue's base and set Claire down. They were now out of the sniper's view. With Claire now in the shade, John turned around, looking for his glasses. Other people who had been hiding behind the wall picked up Claire and moved her down the street, closer to the drag where EMS was waiting. Claire remembers being loaded into a vehicle.
I don't think I was in the ambulance. I might have been in a hearse. They didn't have enough ambulances.
They sped Claire over to Brackenridge Hospital. Back by the statue, John spotted his glasses near the stairs.
And then I had to run back out into the killing zone to get my glasses.
John picked up his glasses, then quickly moved back behind the wall. Behind him, Brian staggered down the steps, holding Claire's boyfriend, Tom.
The body of her boyfriend was brought in. And as I said, he'd bled out. He'd been hit in the neck. And I'd never seen more of a pallor on anybody's face. It was like his face looked like it was carved of white marble. There was no color to it.
John and the others helped Brian carry Tom closer to EMS.
I was one of the ones we helped picked him up and carried him down to the ambulance. And after that, there was nobody left out on the mall, so it seemed like there was nothing left to do.
Brian, the Vietnam War veteran who carried Tom's body, would be interviewed by a TV reporter moments later. He was still winded and stared down at the ground. Blood had stained his white shirt. You can hear the gunfire in the background of the interview as the two talk.
Grant, how many have you gone out to rescue?
Today, 2.
What did you have to do?
Run hard and keep low.
Did you have any trouble getting them up, or did any shots come close to you while you were out there?
No shots came close to me. Just the last one. He was dead. He was dead weight. He was a little hard to pick up, too limp. Not like someone who's knocked out.
Near the top of the tower, Ranger Ray looked up the stairwell that led to the observation deck lobby. Behind him, Officer Day and Cohen were standing near the table on the 27th floor of the tower, trying to keep Michael Gabor Sr., the father of the Gabor family, there.
And I saw the steps, and I saw bloody footprints.
Ranger Ray later wrote in his book that he knew there was no time to waste as he looked up those stairs. He went up the first few steps until Crum stopped him.
He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to find a shooter." And he says, "You're not going along by yourself, friend." He says, "I'll come with you." He says, "We'll do it service style. We'll cover one another." I said, "That sounds wonderful. Come on."
Ranger Ray and Crum made their way up the stairs.
It was quite a few minutes because we worked our way up. We thought perhaps he might be in this corridor, and we didn't know the building. We had to work rather cautiously.
Above them was the Gabor family, who the sniper had shot. They had been in the stairwell since then. Over an hour had passed since the sniper went through. During this time, the older brother Michael Gabor Jr. had been whispering to his mom, Mary Frances. She later wrote in her book that he told her to keep her eyes open and keep talking. He thought she would die if she didn't. The elevators on the 27th floor are within earshot of the stairway. When the family heard the elevator doors open, the son told his mom to play dead. He didn't know if the people on it were there to help or hurt them. Now, Ranger Ray and Crum were just steps away from the family. The pair peered around a corner, and Ranger Ray saw a member of the Gabor family.
I was looking at this young boy. I think his name was Mark Gabor. He was 13 years old.
Ranger Ray said he knew Mark was dead just by looking at him. Just past Mark was his aunt, who was also dead. Ranger Ray made his way down the hallway toward the boy's mother, Mary Frances.
And I looked around the corner, and there was a dead woman. And then there was another woman, that was the mother, that was Miss Gabor, another woman, and she was face down and she was drowning in her blood.
Ranger Ray pulled Mary Frances, who was still alive, out of the blood puddle. He rolled her onto her side.
After we turned her over, then at the end was another young man.
Ranger Ray left her and made his way to her older son, Mike Gabor, who was sitting against the wall farther down the corridor. Crum followed Ranger Ray, covering him with the rifle.
I went over there with Crum and we dragged him back because in case the guy shot down the stairs, we didn't want him to get hit. So we pulled him back and I got blood on my shirt.
The two asked Mike how many snipers there were, and he told them only one. They then asked him where the sniper was.
He told us the man was outside and couldn't see us.
Crum and Ranger Ray pulled Mary Frances and Mike farther down the corridor to keep them from being hit by any bullets.
In the medics, you had triage. You got somebody with a chest wound, that's sucking chest wound, and you got one that's got a bullet through his arm. You take care of the guy with the bullet through his arm because the rate of survival is best if you take care of him for shock and treat him for that blood, and then you go to the other one that's more seriously wounded. In civilian life, it's reverse. You take care of the worst because you're going to have the facilities here. But in a military sense or a shooting incident like this, you're trying to go to the source of your problem, eliminate that, and then everything will take care of itself. I mean, it's hard to leave somebody there and go on.
They continued up the flight of stairs. The two slowly inched up the stairwell, aware the sniper wasn't far away.
I proceeded up, and the end of the stairway, the shooter had blocked the stairway with a desk. So when we got to the desk, we were going to push it.
Before they dismantled the barricade of furniture, Crum had a question for Ranger Ray.
He says, "Are we playing for keeps?" And I said, "You goddamn right we are." That's when I realized that he was not an officer. Because he said, "Well, I guess you better deputize me." And I said, "Consider yourself deputized." And he kind of smiled and said, "Good, yeah, okay."
The two pulled apart the barricade, separating them from the observation deck. Then they walked into the small indoor lobby.
And we came up to looked like somebody had taken a bloody mop across the floor behind a couch.
They followed the blood trail. They looked behind the couch and found Edna Townsley lying there. Like when he had seen Claire, Ranger Ray wanted to help her as the medic he had trained to be in the Army. But he knew there was nothing he could do to save Edna.
She was dying up there. What could I do for her? Except hold her hand. And that was either. You know. But that's the way it is.
Crumb and Ranger Ray continued to make their way through the small lobby. They headed over to a window near the corner of the room, which looked out onto the deck outside. It's a small 2-pane window, so they couldn't see much.
And all I could see out there in the runaround, or whatever you want to call it, I could see bullets, empty shells, and other debris.
A layer of powdered limestone and bullets covered the outdoor deck, making the usually dark red tiles appear white. Near the window was a glass pane door. It was the only way onto the observation deck. But it was blocked.
There was the dolly that he had used to take his equipment up there, propped against it to keep it from opening.
Ranger Ray was getting ready to kick the door open when something flew by him.
I was looking at that dolly to see how I was going to kick it back. A bullet came through the top of the door.
The glass pane shattered above him.
And it hit the hydraulic deal that holds the door open, you know. It hit that canister or whatever you want to call it. And so I held back a minute.
Ranger Ray prepared to shove the door open. Next time on Season 4 of Darkness.
I think that it was at that point that my dad said, I have to get up to the top of the tower somehow.
We didn't know the layout or anything else, and we didn't know how many shooters there were. It sounded like there were probably 4 or 5 people because you hear different sounding reports out of those firearms. And so it was kind of like we didn't know what we were going to find until we got up there.
Bullets were coming right over our heads, boy. It just pop, you know, and they hit, and dust would come down. So I opened fire, fired one round, and I know I hit him because of his reaction to getting hit.
This season of Darkness is reported, written, and hosted by me, Sarah Kinney. Heather Stewart is this season's producer, sound designer, and editor. Katie Penchikautka and Robert Quigley are the executive producers. This podcast is presented by the Drag Audio Production House, which is part of Texas Student Media at the University of Texas at Austin's Moody College of Communication. The associate producers are Jade Emerson, Liv Gamble, Cameron Greiser, Mackenzie Matwick, Ashley Miznazi, Marissa Green, MJ Tilton, Guido Palufo, Liam Quigley, Aurora Berry, and Jeannie Sanchez. The cover art was created by Alexa Georgelos. Sophia Vargas Karam is the Drag's marketing and communications manager. Thank you to the Austin History Center, Neil Spels, and the LBJ Presidential Library for help with the archival audio tapes. Special thanks to the University of Texas School of Journalism and Media and Texas Student Media. Also to Jay Bernhardt, Rachel Davis Mercy, David Reif, and Gerald Johnson. A huge thanks to Leslie Schrock for all her support and guidance. The Drag is a non-profit educational organization that is made possible by individual donations. Please support our work by going to thedragaudio.com/donate. Every dollar goes directly to producing more content like this, while giving students an amazing educational experience. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to The Baker's Show. At Baker's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big. Because when you order online through the Baker's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in-store, with no hidden fees or markups. So no matter how you shop, you'll always save big at Baker's. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Save big on your favorites with the Buy 5 or More, Save $1 each sale. Simply buy 5 or more participating items and save $1 each with your card. Baker's, fresh for everyone.